So, hello, welcome to my new podcast. I'm Jeena, and I want to make a podcast about me meeting interesting people and just talking to them. So today we have Jeremiah with me.
Hello.
So why don't you introduce yourself, Jeremiah?
I think I will. Thanks, Jeena, for letting me do this. This is really fun. I think it's really cool that you're doing this podcast, and can't wait to hear from some of the other ones. It looks like you have some cool guests coming up.
Yeah.
So I'm from the United States, and I moved to Sweden the first time I moved in 1998. I met my wife in New York City. She's Swedish. Mm-hmm. And instead of getting married to get her a green card so she could stay in the U.S., we thought, maybe that's not the best way to begin a marriage, for some paperwork. So we decided, well, let's try Sweden, because you could come to Sweden as a boyfriend and get permission to live and work.
For forever or what?
You would get on a path where you could move towards permanent uppehållstånd. So you could become a permanent citizen, or a citizen.
Because me as a German, after 7 years here in Sweden, I can get the Swedish, what is it called, medborgarskap.
Oh, nice. So you could vote.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How was it for you?
I think the rule was 10 years.
Okay.
Because I tried to vote in some elections a while back, and I couldn't.
Yeah.
I had to go in and ask, and they were like, nope.
Yeah, you can, but can you vote for like the local stuff?
I think I was able to vote at the local level, but not at the national level, and that's what I was interested in.
Okay.
So that didn't work out. But I think I can become a Swedish citizen today. I know I travel on this passport that has this special visa put in. It's my American passport with the Swedish permanent. And whenever you go through, when I go out of the EU and come back into the EU, they always ask me, okay, what are you doing here? Your American passport, we can't let you in unless you've got some reason to be in Sweden. I show them that. But it's really old now. And it's not that it's expired, but usually most people don't carry that around with them. Yeah. That passport I have it in is expired. It's all punched up with special holes because the State Department says that it's no longer a valid U.S. passport. So I have two. Oh. And then every time I come through the border here at Landvetter at the airport, they say, hey, time for you to get a Swedish passport. But I never do.
Yeah, every time I want to get something from the mail, they ask me, "Do you have a Swedish ID?" And no, I don't. But I'm supposed to be able to get it with my German ones.
Do they let you have the stuff?
Yeah,
because they don't for me. I give them my credit card, and that nothing works.
Jesus.
So I had to go and get something from Skatteverket, the tax authorities.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, great. So what did you do before you moved to Sweden?
I was a farmer.
Nah.
No, I dropped out of college to become a painter in New York City.
A what?
Become an artist.
Okay.
I tried to become an artist. So I left college before I was finished to find my fame and fortune in New York, and I didn't find either. So after a few years, I guess maybe I was in New York for about 10 years, and towards the end there, I went back to college to get my degree so I could get a real job. And I got a job at the Museum of Modern Art, and that was fun. But when I went back to college, computers had changed a lot. The internet was much more prevalent. So this was like 96 or so. And all of a sudden, this internet thing, I was like, whoa, what the hell is that? That's so cool. So I really got into web pages, web design, and stuff like that. And that's where the computering really kicked off for me.
So have you been a web designer or what?
Yeah. I mean, I played around with HTML, and then I taught myself later on how to use Perl. And there was, back in the day, in the olden days, CGI and Perl was the way you did web development. Before PHP, exactly. So I mean, that's what I did.
Oh, cool. But I heard you've been cooking in New York also? Yep.
When I left college and went to move to New York to be an artist, I couldn't make a living being an artist, so I cooked in restaurants. And that was a lot of fun. I cooked in some nice ones and some bad ones, but
For how many years?
I did that. I started, my first cooking job was when I was 16, when I was 16, a summer job. So I did it on and off for, I don't know, maybe I've been cooking for about 20 years professionally. I cooked for a long time, made money during college and stuff like that. Did it for a long time. And Yeah, it's a really tough job. It's a job for young people, and you have no social life. You know, I worked 7 days, not 7 days a week, but 6 days a week. Most of the time, it was 10 hours a day, and sometimes it was 12.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's really hard.
And money-wise?
Money's okay. I mean, the thing is that because the conditions for cooking are really tough in the United States, and it's actually living in New York, there are a lot of Hispanic people who will work really hard for very little money. So the competition was really tough. You didn't make a lot of money.
I see.
At the better restaurants, of course, you know, they'll pay a little bit more, but people in the good restaurants, they'll work there for free. You know, there's a lot of people, maybe they're rich and they want to learn how to cook at a fancy restaurant, and now you can actually take courses where you just go into some place like Bootloader or things like that. In fact, in France, a lot of the best restaurants have just brigades of people working for them for free because they can put it on their resume, or because they're just interested in it.
Yeah.
They make their money somewhere else and they want to learn how to cook in a fancy restaurant, and they do it. So there's no shortage of labor in the restaurant industry, which means that wages are kind of low.
Okay, cool. So let's go into this big topic we have today.
Yeah.
So free and open source software. How did you get? I guess you've been a web designer or webmaster or something, and they obviously, when you write Perl and HTML, you obviously want to see how other people do it. So how that's how I learned it, actually.
Really?
That's the great thing about the web, where everything is open source. At least HTML, CSS, JavaScript, everything is open source per default. Not like open source, but the source is open, so you can go into the show source and then just look into everything, and you can learn about it. So that's how I learned, actually. How
too?
Okay,
that's exactly how I learned. And you know, if you wanted your web pages to have a tiny bit more functionality, like you wanted to send a mail, for example, you would Google that and say like, okay, well, here's Matt's web scripts, and then people would say, don't use those, they're buggy. And so I started to get into Perl that way, because people rewrote some of these old-fashioned CGI scripts. And so then I just got this Perl bug. I was really into it. And Perl is actually really an open source project through and through. Larry Wall was, big into open source. He played a major role in its formation. Perl is really old.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's been around for a long time, and they have something. Perl itself is licensed either under the GPL or the artistic license. And the artistic license has actually been through court and been shown to be a valid commercial license.
Okay.
So it's actually quite a strong one. And in conjunction with the GPL, it means that, Perl is free software, always has been free software, and has really contributed a great deal to open source in general. And that, combined with Apache, all of a sudden you have a very powerful system. You can host internally a web server, Perl scripts for functionality, and then HTML for presentation. When the database came along, when MySQL was available, then all of a sudden people had these LAMP stacks, and you could do amazing things with them and replace your file servers. And as that was all coming about and bubbling up, I just sort of surfed that wave and followed along, because there was so much documentation. There was a huge community. Yeah. And you could learn so quickly and so easily.
It's super big, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I never took a course in Apache, but you can learn how to configure it, because their documentation's so awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Cool.
So that's how I got into that.
But I would say now you're like a free software evangelist almost.
I hope so. That's what I try and be.
So how did you? But because many people use open source, obviously, right? But how did you get into the evangelism? So working with it and like being out there and promoting it. How did that happen?
That actually happened because I moved to Gothenburg. Amazingly enough, in Gothenburg, there are a couple people. Well, at the time, let's say about 2004, when I first got here, my second time, there were about 3 guys who were extremely important in the Free Software Foundation Europe. And one guy was named Matthias Klang, and he's a lawyer. Mm-hmm. He's now moved to the United States. He was very open with, or very helpful for the Creative Commons stuff. So, and I helped them with a web page or two. So I got to know him and work with him a little bit. Then there was Jonas Ögberg, who is actually the chief administrator for the Free Software Foundation Europe right now, and has been involved with that group very long. And then Henrik Sandclef, who also is a board member of the Free Software Foundation Europe. And through those guys, there was sort of a free software team in Sweden, a community in Sweden, and we talk about this stuff, and I would follow along with them to FOSDEM and to other conferences, and just through talking and discussing it, a lot of it rubbed off on me through osmosis, and it became something I was really interested in. And these guys, they brought Richard Stallman here. Oh. They were deeply involved in the case against Microsoft, so they knew the lawyer Carlo Piana, who is also part of the Free Software Foundation Europe. He's, is important in the legal network that is a group of lawyers that talk about free software. So just being involved in all those things made me more of an evangelist, because these people really cared about it, and their enthusiasm rubbed off on me. And, I just got deeper into it. And as open source has become more important, there have been more opportunities for somebody like myself who knows a little bit about the licenses and can talk with the experts who do know, and sort of can shuttle back and forth between those two communities.
That's true, yeah. Cool.
So that's how it came about. It's almost completely by accident, to be honest.
But that's the best way to do it, I guess. Then you're in for the thing and not just like...
Exactly. I mean, I know that I really have a passion for it, but I have no idea what I'm doing. So, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just like making this shit up.
Because... would you say you are a programmer, or actually not really? Because I don't see you programming that much.
No, I don't. I mean, I really love to do it when I get the chance. And I think it's like a lot of guys here. I see my friend, we see Eric sitting down, or Joachim, or yourself.
Those are the guys who work together with us at Pelagic.
Right. Our colleagues. So like when I see our colleagues sitting down getting to write code, they're like, leave me alone, don't bother me, I'm getting to write code. They're so excited. Because a lot, to be quite honest, a lot of times working with free software means that you're really an integrator.
Yeah.
You're not a programmer. It's so rare that you get to open up a terminal with a blank page and just right at the top, the include files you want or whatever it is. It just doesn't happen that much. And my background, after 9/11 happened, I was in Boston, and that was really weird. After that happened, I was laid off. Because a lot of businesses everything changed.
Yeah.
And I was laid off. So I went back to school and I got a system administration program. So I have a background in system administration.
So what kind of school is?
This was Boston University Corporate Education.
Whoa.
And this was, exactly. It's so sad. It's like, what does it program you to be a corporate robot? Yeah, that's me. But yeah, I did that before I came to Sweden. So I did have a background in Unix, and of course I played around in Perl and HTML. And so, but I would never really call myself a programmer, no. I like to think I know my way around Perl, but I'm kidding myself.
That is, yeah. It's
sad,
not only
true.
you. It's not only you. So I have here on my list, what is the difference between free and open source software? Because for me, for a really, really long time, it was the same thing until I read some comments from Richard Stallman, where he just explained it to me, and it just opened my eyes.
Yeah.
It's perhaps you could just elaborate on that.
I'm going to say the same thing. Obviously, I think he's very eloquent about it, and I think he makes the definition really clear.
But for listeners who don't know...
don't know?
Yeah.
Well, for me, the difference between free software and open source is that free software allows you those 4 very specific freedoms to use, copy, modify, and distribute software, whereas open source just maybe lets you look at the source code. It doesn't necessarily give you the right to modify it or to distribute it further. And even if it does, it doesn't often have the power of copyleft, which I think is the real innovation. It's copyleft. That means that, the value of your contribution to something like the Linux project remains with the project and can't be taken behind a corporate firewall and turned into a product that nobody else can share.
For example?
Well, I think that if you take a look at BSD, the free BSD, for example, or the other BSD distros, that's a tremendous operating system. I mean, why hasn't it exploded like Linux? It has a longer pedigree. It's equally secure. It has, as many technical refinements as you might want to find in Linux. Well, why aren't we all running around with free BSD devices? Well, we are, but one big company, Apple, turned FreeBSD into Darwin, and they use it as the basis for their systems.
But Darwin is still...
Darwin is open source, absolutely, but the value that's added on top of it is not capturable through copyleft. So you're not getting the magic secret sauce in Darwin.
So how is Darwin different from Linux? Because you can take Linux as your base and then put your stuff on top of it and then sell it and never give the source code, your source code away. Isn't that what Apple does also? Not
really. For example, let's say you take Linux and you make a silicon. You're a silicon vendor and you take Linux and you write a driver for it. You can make a binary driver, put it with Linux, and then sell your product, and then nobody would get the benefits of it. Yeah. But what happens is also that there's a huge use through that driver, and hopefully that will improve Linux in general. So you do get some benefits, even with proprietary binary blobs in the kernel. But more often what happens is that people want their, let's see, networking stack to be effective. Okay. So they make improvements to the networking stack, and that gets back into the Linux kernel. If you contribute that to Darwin, well, you don't know if you're going to get that back when Darwin is released again. If you make, let's say you do an implementation of IP6 in Darwin, well, why would Apple want to maintain that if it competes with their own IPv6 implementation? In the Linux kernel, the decision is made, okay, well, is this the best technical decision? Is it secure? Is it safe? Is it the right thing to have?
It's not a business decision.
It's not a business decision. It's more technical. But Darwin still, I think, is very much steered by business decisions. OpenSSH, OpenBSD is not. That's by security decisions. FreeBSD is not. That's all about, being the world's best web server. But Linux is much more flexible than that, and I think the reason for that is that it's got copyleft baked in, because they use the GPL. So that's what I think is the difference. Okay.
Copyleft. Okay, cool. But on this topic, Tivoization, that's a really nice one, I guess, because we didn't have with GPL version 2. And I guess 2.1 also, we didn't have the possibility to tell the people who use our code to give it to their users. That first came with GPL v3, isn't it?
I think it really came with. It was really part of the GPL in the beginning, but what happened with TEVA was they're a real company. I think they still exist. They put an encryption key on their software image so that when the TEVA box booted, it checked if the key was there. And if the key wasn't there, then you couldn't boot. So if you wanted to change your software, you would have to change the hash sum of the image. And then the key checks the hash sum and says, oh, different hash sum. No. I'm not going to boot. So what happened is that even though they used the GPL, even though they were using Linux, and even though they allowed you to change the software and gave away the source code, they didn't allow you to change the source code on your device.
And then it's kind of useless.
You're renting it.
Yeah.
That device belongs to someone else. Even though you may have written the software, and that software may have your copyright. You wrote the software belongs to you, you bought the box belongs to you, but you can't change anything. But I think that is pretty uncool, actually.
Yeah, I guess most of the people don't care because...
No, sure, many don't care.
But people like you and me, we do care.
Yeah, but there are a lot of people who do care, actually. And when you choose to release your software under the GPL, that's a sign that you do care.
Yeah, that's true.
And many people who write software under the GPL were quite upset. And so, this anti-Tivoization clause got brought in. And it is an issue for a lot of companies today. I don't think that the Free Software Foundation is really particularly worried about that.
No.
TiVo, in their eyes, did something wrong, and frankly, I agree with them. What happens, though, when your embedded device has to be certified by an organization as safety critical? That's tricky. All of a sudden, you really don't want users to be downloading software onto a safety critical device. What if it's your pacemaker? You really don't want somebody hacking that or playing with that.
But why not, actually? Because if they do it to themselves, they can shoot themselves, they can hang themselves. So.
Sure. Well, with the pacemaker, they can hurt themselves. But in a car, they can kill others.
But isn't it like if you tinkle with the brakes, isn't it the same thing?
It probably is very similar, yes.
Because you can kill people by not doing it right when you forget to.
Absolutely, and that happens. Yeah. And people do actually get these small MCUs, these engine control units, for example, and they change them around so that the fuel mixture is different, or they bring in more oxygen, and they soup up their Porsche, but they release tons of black smoke into the atmosphere. Okay, that's not that big a deal. But at the same time, if a car maker does this, if a car maker makes something that is inherently unsafe, they will get sued. But if they inherently defeat the environmental policies and procedures for a state government, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. So they have to at least certify and ensure
that they can still do that, can't they? I don't quite understand.
Well, they can't. For example, often you certify a device. Yeah. So let's say you have, you certify an embedded device, and all the software on there is running, and the CPU checks at boot time from usually what they use is a hardware security module, HSM. And this HSM is tamper-proof, and inside it holds an encryption key.
Okay.
So if anybody were to get this actual device and try and change the encryption key, the device would break and render itself useless. So that's the kind of strict security that's required for this kind of certification, so that you have this HSM, it's tamper-proof. Mm-hmm. That means that when you boot, you've certified it with this key. And now you have a chain of trust that goes from the silicon all the way up to the end user application.
I see.
Compromising that chain of trust by giving away the opportunity to install software on that device renders the safety certification obsolete.
So like in airplanes and stuff like this. Yeah.
Airplanes do it a number of ways. I mean, they use, you can log into a jet engine with secure shell. SSH will allow you to do that. Of course, nice. they're using a proprietary version of SSH.
Okay.
Something that's written, by a company and copyrighted by a company. Okay. And then airplanes go ahead and do two redundant systems. So you have different systems from different suppliers. And that's what they're trying to do, is make sure that you have a fail-safe.
Oh, I see.
Obviously. So that's safety as opposed to, say, security. But you need both. Mm-hmm. And in many systems, security and safety require encryption keys. And they require that not get changed around. I mean, we have EFI nowadays. So we have a bootloader on your desktop that does the same thing, that checks to make sure that the key is there and will only boot things that are properly signed.
Why?
Well, because...
What's the reasoning behind it on a desktop?
It's a vector for attack. I mean, you can also use that to check that you've got a correct copy, but it really is a vector for attack. It allows you to boot an operating system that can take control of your hardware. Yeah. And then you're in big trouble. So, the Free Software Foundation, too, they like this opportunity to be able to encrypt systems. What they want to do is to make sure that if you are using open source software, Linux software, GPL free software, they want you to be able to change the device that comes on. Yeah. But I think that's a challenge when it comes to safety. So would it be possible if they just... So if you would send them the binary and they would sign it and give the key to you or something? Yeah, that may be a possibility. I mean, you can imagine that people would create app stores where they would sign things for them, like Apple and Google does. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if car companies plan to do that. I think that there's probably, to be honest with you, a mix. Many companies would like to keep these devices as closed as possible, to create these walled gardens.
Sure.
I mean, that's a commercial opportunity.
That's
sad to
okay.
say.
In my opinion, it's okay, but just don't use our code.
Yeah, yep, exactly. That's the way I feel.
What is the difference between GPL and LGPL? I never got that quite.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think of it this way: is that the GPL, the GNU public license, is better for applications and end user programs, where the LGPL, which is called the lesser GNU public license, is better for libraries. I think that if you look at the LGPL, it's much more flexible in many ways.
Okay.
Even V3, because when they built Tivoization, they also made the GPL in GPL v3. They also made it more like the GPL in that sense that you can modify it. You can modify the license itself.
Okay.
And your ability to modify this license, and particularly the LGPL, can allow you to transform that license into something completely different. So you can take out the anti-Tivoization clause
From
GPL v3.
Okay.
So you can literally say, I give you this software under the LGPL v3, and at the same time, I grant you an exception to Section 6, which is the anti-Tivoization clause. And so now you can use this software under the GPL v3 without having to tell anybody how to install the software on the system.
I see.
And there's actually, this has been studied by lawyers. There's actually a little snippet of code out there that, you can find. I don't think that's necessarily sanctioned by anyone, but I know that, open free software lawyers have looked quite closely at it and say it would stand up in court. And this is a viable means to do that. And not only is the LGPL really flexible, but the Free Software Foundation Europe says it's okay to sell exceptions. Mm-hmm. This is an okay thing. The important thing is that there's got to be an open source or a free software version somewhere. And even a permissive license is better than no open source license at all. So, I mean, that's really quite flexible, though, I think. I mean, I think it's very generous.
Yeah.
And it really shows that the intention is to make sure that free software is open and available and widely used, as opposed to, say, this kind of thing where we're going to tell you what you have to do with your device, or it's viral, or that it, somehow we're going to take people's IP. It's not that at all.
But if you say with your device, you mean with the producer of the device, not the user of the device. Okay,
yeah, exactly.
Because I see it like, if I buy some device, it's mine.
Right.
And I get that Apple doesn't see it like that.
Don't see it that way.
Or TEVA or whoever. But
Yeah.
I guess it's a difference in our opinions.
I think so.
But the permissive licenses you mentioned, it's like MIT, BSD, and so on, which let you basically do whatever you want.
Pretty much. I mean, they are all permissive, let's put it that way, but they're permissive in different ways. It's not a nasty thing to be permissive. Permissive licenses, though, they don't have copyleft, which is the power to make sure that, copyright stays with the work itself, which is very powerful. That has a great, gives you great opportunities, not just in business, but it gives you a lot of software freedom if the copyright stays with the work. In permissive licenses, you don't get that power. You just get this license to go with the software, but the copyright is not transferred to you. So
what do you mean by
that makes it weaker. Well, it just means like, I don't have the copyright, so I can't distribute this software anymore.
Okay.
But what I can do is take it and make a product out of it and sell that product. Any changes I make, I have to send back. But
do you really? Why?
In the MIT license, no. MIT is just pretty much a free-for-all.
Okay.
It's one step above the public domain, which is like saying, I divorce thee, I divorce thee, I divorce thee. I have no idea what this software is and does, and I'm leaving it in the public domain.
Yeah.
But public domain, people don't want that, because even if you explicitly disclaim your right to copyright, you can come back and claim it later.
Okay.
So public domain software is tricky.
Yeah.
MIT is good because it's not public domain, but it's roughly the same. It says you have the right to do whatever you want with this software, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Then we get to the other permissive license like Apache 2 and the Mozilla public license, which are a little bit better because they have patent protection inside there, that you can't make patent claims against them.
Okay.
So these are really great licenses.
So is it like if I find some software which has been done before with this license, then no, I can show that no, you can't do this patent because there is already a software and this.
It gets a little bit more complicated, and I'm going to, before I say something stupid, I would think that we'd need to take a look and maybe even talk with the patent lawyer. But what it really does is gives you a sort of patent protection. It creates this kind of patent pool. If you're going to go and use Apache web server under the Apache license, and then somebody files a lawsuit, a patent infringement lawsuit against Apache and says, you stole my patent. Well, guess what? Immediately you lose the right to use the Apache web server.
I see. Yeah.
So it's going to be really difficult for you to go and use the Apache software and then claim that it's taken your patents. That's just not going to work.
I see, yeah.
But, Apache is widely used throughout Android. So obviously Google thinks that offers good patent protection. And so it's a good license.
Yeah, I think so too, yeah. So which one is more free, basically? Yeah, GPL or like licenses like GPL or licenses like MIT, BSD, and so on, which are more permissive.
People argue about that all the time. It's basically it's like they say, "Oh, GPL's no good. I want complete and utter freedom to do whatever I want." But I don't think that's true because the GPL provides freedoms not just for yourself, but it extends those freedoms to your users, to everyone. And that's what's really important. Freedom is meaningless if somebody can take it away from you trivially.
Exactly.
You've got to ensure it remains.
As I see it, MIT BSD has more freedom for the developer, but GPL has more freedom for the user, which I care a lot more about than the developer. But obviously, I also understand that other developers don't think like me. Yeah. They think, I want to do stuff with, if I'm doing the work, I need the freedoms, not my users.
Exactly. That's my position too. I think the same way you do.
Yeah. So some time ago we talked about, or at least I heard you talking about, if you see someone violating the GPL, then you as a user can't sue them. You have to get, or how does it work?
Yeah, I mean, I can't run around saying, "Oh, I heard this company's violating the GPL" on a mailing list. I'm going to sue them. Mm-hmm. You don't have standing. You have to have standing, and what that means is that somebody has to have done something wrong to you. Mm-hmm. And if they've done something wrong to you by violating your copyright, because your copyright is in Linux, they're using Linux under the GPL, you said they could use it under the GPL, but then they're breaking the GPL license. Okay. Then you can go and say, hey, wait a second, you're breaking the license I gave you, and then you have standing to go to court. You also have that if you say buy a phone, and the phone has your copyright software in there, or even if you're just an end user of the phone. I own this phone. You were supposed to release the software with me. With the phone, you didn't do that, I can take you to court. Obviously, many users don't do that, and the only people who really care about that often are software developers who've had their software used contrary to the license they planned. So it's very hard to get a reaction to that. And at the most recent FOSDEM I've heard, people like Bradley Kuhn say that more than ever, GPL is being violated. Mm-hmm. But that's probably because more than ever it's being used.
It's used, yes. So what can you do as a user? Can you do?
It's actually quite tough. There was a time when the Software Freedom Conservancy used some GPL software, BusyBox, to try and ensure that embedded device makers or people who use BusyBox comply with the GPL. Mm-hmm. And that became tricky and a little bit contentious. And I think we backed off a little bit that kind of stance. I think now there's a community compliance process so that the people who write the GPL, Free Software Foundation, and the Software Freedom Conservancy really try and explain what they think is the best way to release a product and comply with the license. And there are times when the Free Software Foundation will get in contact with companies to tell them, look, we think you're violating the GPL. Could you please change? But usually lawsuits are the ultimately last resort. There's really no interest in filing lawsuits. Money is never the issue. It's always about software freedom. Yeah. So it really is uncommon that it goes to court. And what an individual user can do is really probably limited. You can certainly contact the Free Software Foundation. They have a compliance mailing list. And you can also contact this group called gplviolations.org. Okay. But in neither case, nothing's going to happen overnight. And
obviously.
You may want to contact the company yourself and things like that. That's what I do. I'd encourage people to say, look, I'm a customer. You're using the GPL. I would like you to comply with it.
I've seen screenshots or like pictures of BMW this IHU units where it said, yeah, if you want to get the code, just write an email to blah 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 at bmw.de, I guess. And apparently they sent you a CD or something.
Yeah,
with all the code. So, or I guess you still won't be able to change it and run it on your BMW, but at least you can look what software they use and how they work.
Yeah, and BMW actually, their car IT group is on GitHub, so they have a ton of software on GitHub. So yeah, they actually really get open source, I think, BMW.
That's cool.
Many of the car companies actually are really pretty good about it.
Oh yeah, perhaps we should mention that we work in the...
We probably should. We don't work for BMW, but we do work in the car industry making automotive software.
Exactly. Propose making money with free software, or at least open
Who's
source.
Figured that out? Jeez.
Because we were really working in a company which makes... Yeah, which has it on the front page. We do open source.
Exactly.
And we still are a company.
Yeah.
And obviously in the last 5-7 years, many companies got into the boat. Now even Microsoft is releasing tons of stuff on GitHub. The whole .NET framework and so on. It's really amazing. So
it is amazing.
So I have this list from Wikipedia, which is about how what was it called? Yeah, something like how to make business models for open source software.
Right.
So perhaps we could just go through it and just something short. Do a licensing, which would be that you have your stuff as under the GPL, but if someone wants to have it under some commercial license, you could sell them this to them, and then they could use it like any other
commercial software. Yep. That, I think, is quite effective. I think it's pretty popular, and I think that's a lot of companies are very comfortable with that, both buying and selling that way.
That's, in my opinion, for open source, from the open source view of the world, this works really well.
I think so too.
But from the free software point of view, that's just how perhaps I didn't think enough about it or anything. But I think if I'm making software, I'm writing code, and I get other people to join me in writing this code, and then we decide to make it GPL, so the users get the freedom they deserve, and then I relicense it to someone who just doesn't give the freedoms to those users.
Right.
I still am quite uncomfortable with it.
No, I agree with you. I think that that's a bit problematic. But I still think that, one of the powers of open source or free software, let's say, is that it's non-discriminatory. It says you can use the software for whatever purpose, including making money.
Yeah.
I mean, that is absolutely legitimate use. And in fact, I think that these free software, the GPL, was really designed for businesses. So I still think it fits with the free software ethos. Let's take a project, let's say like Samba. That works with Microsoft systems, but it's GPL v3. So if they go ahead and make this awesome GPL v3 software, which any individual can download and use to connect their Linux system to a Microsoft system, but they sell licenses for it so you can use it commercially, I don't see what the problem is. You can still get the software for free as an individual, but if you buy this license, now you can use it commercially and lock your head unit.
But all the changes they do to it
will not come back. Yeah, that's true. And
you still can, as a user, you still can't refresh the device and blah blah blah.
No, you can't.
So all those freedoms are suddenly gone.
They are, but what's happened is that many of those freedoms are captured back in the software itself. In other words, Samba, first of all, has to be good enough for somebody to want to pay money for it.
Sure.
So there's that. So that there's been a lot of investment of time and effort in it.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's good working software. And if you're going to charge money for it, there has to be a reason somebody's willing to pay money. And probably it's because it's higher quality, it's known commodity, you get better support. There are a bunch of other things that are probably very valuable to businesses. And the odds that somebody's going to take Samba and change the software significantly and then lock those changes up are pretty slim. They're most likely going to, in that case, use it for free and make sure the modifications go up and are maintained by somebody else, just like the Linux kernel.
Okay.
Because you don't want to be having to maintain this Samba software. No. That's ridiculously expensive. It's a liability all of a sudden.
I guess it depends on how big this software is. If it's a small thingy, then you can just modify it and do whatever you want with
exactly.
it. And then, yes, it's a loss, but mostly, like you say, with Linux kernel, you don't want this stuff lying around
exactly
at your office somewhere.
No.
You want it to be hassle-free.
Exactly.
Upstream. That is true, yeah.
And if you look at, we just saw Daniel Steinberg's talk on curl. I mean, he's used software. He says in billions of devices. And he doesn't make any money from that, and he still has to have a regular job. I mean, he has a great job. But
he works at Mozilla, I think.
Yeah, he works at Mozilla.
That's cool.
But that's a relatively small system. In other words, the developers that work on curl can manage it. It's not a huge project like Linux, which hundreds and hundreds of developers work on. And I think it's permissively licensed.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I don't think there are that many changes. I don't think that there's anything really that happens to curl that not everybody is going to be able to get. I mean, it's an interesting dynamic, and I think you raise a very important issue, but I don't know how big, and nobody knows how big the changes are behind the corporate firewall.
That is true. For me, it's mostly like a principle thing.
Yeah.
And I don't see it practically. I guess it's not much they can change, which will be super duper for us.
Exactly.
Runners. Because if they can do it, we can do it also.
Exactly.
It's not a real problem. It's just a problem it's out of principle. I think it's wrong, and it's mostly a feeling. I can't point with a finger what it is exactly what bothers me.
No, I agree. And I feel the same way you do. I think it is an important principle issue. But on the other hand, free software programmers need to eat. I mean, it's not unfair to give them good jobs with good pay in ethical conditions. And as long as you have ethical business practices, why shouldn't somebody be paying for a free software license? I think that's a great idea. I think it's an effective idea. So I look at it that way. I look at it like, wow, we're putting free software developers to work, giving them good jobs. I think that's very cool.
Nice. Okay, the next one is selling professional services, which is, I guess, the easiest one to understand.
Like Red Hat's model, I believe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they give you Linux in a nice package, and they look that everything works together, and you pay them for that.
Right. And they've moved a little bit more to software as a service, I think, many of those companies, because you bake the professional service into the good, If you're a web server, yeah.
I guess even Microsoft does it because they release a lot of stuff just because they sell you the services instead now. Like what is it called, Asana or something?
Yeah, there's Azure.
Azure, yeah.
Yep, their cloud service, yeah.
Exactly. So that seems to work quite well for them.
I think they make a lot of money on it.
And I heard only good stuff about it.
People talk very highly of it. Yeah.
Even most people even say it's better than AWS and so on. So,
that's interesting.
Yeah. So the next one is selling off-branded merchandise.
Well, if you think about it, I think this is actually really quite clever. The value of a lot of free software or FOSS in general tends to accrue lower in the stack. In other words, we're not going to see a lot of free software GUIs and graphical tools or graphics drivers are not open. And so we haven't seen a lot at, say, the top of the stack.
Yeah.
But way down where the silicon and the software meet, that's huge benefit. So if you build devices, free software is hugely beneficial to you. So if you look at it that way, if I can make a tablet or a phone completely free software and sell it, I'm saving myself a ton of money. So this, I think, is a good model.
But is it branded merchandise?
Yeah, I mean, in one way it is. I mean, this phone is made by LG, for example.
Yeah.
But 1,000 subcontractors have worked on it in different companies. And so they get the chip from, let's say, MediaTek, or they get the sock from somebody else. So in the end, all it is just LG putting its brand on it by saying, we've integrated all these little parts from all over the world.
But doesn't merchandise mean more
Do they mean selling T-shirts? Yeah. If that's what they mean, then I don't think that's going to work. I mean, I don't know.
Then the next one is selling of certificates and trademark use.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting approach. I don't like that very much.
No, I mean, I guess it's Canonical who kind of do something like that.
What Canonical do is they take Debian packages, they compile them again, and they change the name of the deb package to add Ubuntu, and that puts their trademark on it. So you could have Apache 2.24, and then the Ubuntu compiles it again, calls Apache 2.24-ubuntu.deb. Okay, and now I can't use it because it's got the Ubuntu trademark on it. That's not cool. All they did was compile it. Yeah. Something like, I think people have measured, and they say something like 79% of Ubuntu is stock Debian testing.
Obviously, yeah.
So, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, you would expect that. Yeah. So they're only adding a small bit, and then to slap your trademark on all of that, I don't know how nice that is.
But I don't think that's what they mean here in Wikipedia.
Maybe not.
Wikipedia. I think it's more like that. Yeah, trademark use. So if you want to if they say if Ubuntu would sell a phone and you want to sell earphones for that or whatever, and you want to have the little Ubuntu logo on it.
Works with Ubuntu.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess that's something like that.
Yep.
Trademark use.
I think so.
Okay, selling software as a service. Didn't we have that? Oh, selling professional services and then
software as a service. Yeah, I think those two go together, but they are different. SaaS.
Yeah.
Software as a service.
Yeah, but then professional services is just mostly like what we at Pelagic could do sometimes.
I think so, yep.
You want to have some software which will be open source later on, so we can write it for you.
Yep. Yeah. Collabora will do that with GStreamer, for example, or LibreOffice. There are a lot of companies that will do that. Yep.
Yeah. Partnership with funding organizations.
That's also something we do. I mean, Geneva and AGL, they fund software to be developed for them. In fact, the Linux Foundation has a host of these alliances and organizations, and you can go work there and often get paid to do statement of work projects to add something. So yeah, that's pretty big, I think.
Is it also like what Google does with the Google Code Summer or something like that?
Summer of Code, I think they give to students almost exclusively, and they fund them a really great summer job. You get I guess you get $5,000 or something. I don't know exactly.
But all
I don't think it's quite the same.
Is then open source, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep.
So that's a nice way to...
Definitely. That's an excellent model. And I'd really think that there's a future in that model. It'd be really cool to investigate that more.
I guess Mozilla does the same. I
Pretty much.
know a couple of people who made like a summer. They got paid by Mozilla, coded for Mozilla, and then everything was open source.
Yeah.
At the end.
I don't think you can run a company that way. But I do think you can get
like
some
funding
good jobs.
organization.
Absolutely.
Like Mozilla is a funding organization. They get funds and then they distribute it somehow.
Exactly.
And then we get the benefits of it, we as the users, which is super cool.
It is super cool.
Okay, voluntary donations.
And we've seen with Daniel Steinberg, he says that he gets very few.
Yeah. So that's a dead horse.
Yeah, that's a dead horse.
Bounty-driven development.
This, I think, is really interesting, especially if you start talking about things like the blockchain. So imagine that I had a system where we would file bugs. So I throw open my bug tracker, and I've got like 400 open bugs because I'm building this thing. Or you go through Debian, and they got 10,000 open bugs. Imagine if we had electronic ledger that would send you a little bit of Bitcoin every time you closed a bug, and then we could rank these bugs based on their value to being fixed. So a big company like Spotify, let's say, who runs 5,000 Debian servers apparently, and they're like, oh, we're stuck with this one bug. We can't link our systems together. If we could get this fixed, that would be amazing for us. And for us, that's worth 1,000 euros. So they go into the Debian bug tracker, put bug 575, 1,000 euros in Bitcoin, and anybody can fix that bug, claim the Bitcoin when they close the bug. I
That's
think
amazing,
we could fund massive projects that way.
I guess so too, yeah.
I really think we could. I don't know that that's necessarily a good thing. I think that the prices should probably be higher so that you can make a living doing this.
Yeah.
But there's also HackerOne that does this. They put out bug bounties. You can go to HackerOne, get a HackerOne account, and then claim bounties there. And I think that definitely is the future of the model, at least for free software.
So this HackerOne thing, it's a website where everybody who has bugs can go to and tell...
Exactly. In one direction, companies come and they say they have a bounty for this. If you can find an exploit for this product we have in the market, we will give you this much money. And then hackers come in there and say, okay, that's worth it. And that's good because what you're doing is you're preemptively taking a hack or a potential 0 day off the market. Because if you find a good 0 day, you can sell that for millions. So literally.
That is true. It's much cheaper to do it.
Exactly. So for companies, it's much cheaper to do it this way. And I think software development in general could benefit that way.
Yeah. That's true. I guess on Stack Overflow, you have such a bounty program, but you don't get money. You get like karma.
Yeah.
And then I saw on GitHub that they introduced this also. I don't know, but without money, obviously, again. But I guess some karma thing. I didn't quite see exactly what that is.
I think it would be really cool if we could link those gamification systems together, whereby you could like sort of swap out. If likes on Facebook, if hearts on Twitter, if those little GitHub icons showing you've committed, if all those became a currency that you could trade between them and you could collect them and change that for, say, actual currency that you could use in your day-to-day, I think that'd be really cool.
I guess, have you heard about Flutter?
Yeah, I've heard of Flutter.
So Flutter kind of does something like that. So every time I listen to a podcast, my podcast client automatically flatters it with my account. So every time I do a like on Instagram, it flatters that person. Every time I do a like on Facebook, wherever I connected it flatters that person. So that person gets my money.
That's really cool.
It's not much. It's not a lot of money, and sadly, it's not many use it. Yeah. So
see, that's the thing. It would have to be much more widely used, or we connect it to a system. Systems that are already widely used.
Yeah.
But in free software, those systems are smaller. You know, I mean, the Debian bug tracker is massive repository of very valuable information. So I don't know. Yeah.
So the next one is pre-order, crowdfunding, and reverse.
Yeah, I guess that's like, there's actually a really cool Debian tablet now that's being crowdfunded. Okay. I think it's on Indiegogo. And that's a really great business model. They come out and they say, this tablet will not track you. It's all built with free software. Da-da-da. We've got Tor running. Da-da-da-da. Okay. And so you you pay. They've raised $16,000. I think they want to raise $150,000. Then they'll go to market, and you get a tablet, and you've supported this project. And that's a really interesting model, I think.
Oh yeah. Okay. So.
I think that works. It didn't work for the Yolo tablet that I wanted. So I've been burned.
Yeah. Tell us about it.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a really beautiful tablet, I thought. And it was going to be with the Sailfish OS. And it's from the folks at Yolo. And they've done I think their phones are really great. I think they've done really great software work. But unfortunately, they were doing this work with Foxconn in China. And for whatever reason, they couldn't get the tablets produced. So they were forced to refund the money.
So did you get your money back?
I did.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, the whole process was very good. Yolo was incredibly professional. They're a great company. I'm just sad I didn't get my Sailfish tablet. That's all.
Damn it.
Yeah, it's too bad.
Yeah, I had a Yolo phone.
Yeah.
Until 2 weeks ago when someone broke into my house and stole it.
No, that's horrible.
Yeah. We'll see if I get a new one. Because even with the phones, it's a bit so-so, because if you break the glass, you can't get a new glass for your phone.
Oh, really?
You have to buy a new phone.
Oh, that's too bad.
Or a new battery, you can't get a new battery or anything. So it's nice that you can switch out the battery, but you can't buy a second battery. So I tried, but they are all sold out. So I don't know.
Fascinating.
Advertising supported software.
Blah.
Jesus Christ.
If I have to click another ad, I will kill myself.
Exactly. Selling of optional proprietary extensions.
Yeah, that's like Open Core or something. Nginx does that. I don't like that either.
Nginx does it?
Yeah, they went to Open Core model, as they call it.
Okay.
Where they have most of the projects open source, but they add some stuff that's proprietary. Qt used to do that. For example, they add some compilation optimization as a commercial add-on, but now they're moving to push that into the open too, which I think is really cool. So Qt's going in the opposite direction, being much more open. But some projects do that. They have a closed proprietary extensions.
Interesting. Selling of required proprietary parts of a software product.
That I also think is nasty.
That is really nasty. Yeah. Why is it on the list?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Relicensing under a proprietary license.
That sounds a lot like dual licensing.
Exactly.
To me,
Yeah.
but
Interesting. Or it's perhaps what is it called? The guys who did this, and you're using also the media server. What is it called?
Delania?
No. Damn it. Yeah, there's a media server, Subsonic.
Subsonic,
Exactly.
yeah.
Subsonic just went from a GPL license to a closed license.
Oh, that's so uncool.
Like 2 months ago or something.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, it's that for me.
Right. And you've been writing a client for it.
No, I've been writing the server. So I'm writing a
competitor.
Exactly. But which only works with audio, not video, because they do podcast, video, audio, whatever. And it's a big Java blob.
Oh.
And it's so slow on my Raspberry Pi 1 that I try to replace it with a Go program with a much smaller one.
Excellent.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'll have to play with that. That sounds fun.
Obscurification of source code.
That's just also nasty. Yeah.
Why is it why is it on the list?
I don't know why it's on the list.
And delayed open sourcing. That could be okay.
It could be okay. It really is. That really is the case with a lot of things today. If you're going to work for a big company developing hardware, for example, often you're going to make all the software and then release it. You don't have to release anything as open source until you distribute.
Yeah.
So, it might be years before the product gets to market. So, I mean, this seems perfectly okay. I don't know why you would call it delayed open sourcing. It's just regular open sourcing.
I guess it's like Android. So
very similar.
Google gives it as a binary thingy to you, and then a bit later you get also the source code.
Exactly. Apple does the same thing, for example. They go to Samsung. They say, we want you to develop this awesome chip that does all these fancy things with specification. We want you to do it for us, and we'll pay you all this money for it. But in exchange, you cannot go ahead and make these chips for somebody else until our product is in the market.
Oh.
And Samsung gets a ton of money, and of course they're going to do that. And then later they go and build their own product based on those chips. But Apple gets to the market first.
Those chips this chip design, is it Apple's or is it some?
Well, this was just an example, but Apple does fabricate its own chips.
Okay.
But they do buy chips from Samsung too.
Okay, yeah, cool.
Or have in the past.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the list from Wikipedia.
That was interesting.
Interesting.
It's really cool.
So I have a last point on my list here.
Cool.
I have a friend who uses a lot of open source software, and he kind of likes the idea, but at the same time he is a programmer who wants to write end user software, like for mobile phones or desktop and so on. And so he doesn't, and he wants to get paid somehow.
Of course.
So he struggles to find a way to open source his programs, because he does a lot of, for the iPhone. It's quite easy. You make to make closed source software, because you write it, you put it on the App Store, and people buy it, and you get the money or not.
Exactly.
However, but what could he do? Like, even with desktop software, it's easy to get, like, make a PayPal account or something, and people buy your software. But he feels that, because we've been obviously talking about it a lot, and I tried to convince him and so on, but it's super difficult, because he says, as soon as I release the software as in whatever GPL or whatever, someone will just go and do what Canonical does, basically. Just recompile it and sell it.
Put a new brand on it or something. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that's tricky. It's very tricky, and getting a trademark for it where you can sue those people is expensive. But that might be something he wants to look into. If it's significant amounts of money that people are sort of stealing from him, then I would say invest in a trademark. You know, Ubuntu also has an app store. You may be able to distribute your app that way. That might be an option. Otherwise, I think on vanilla desktop Linux, it's very difficult to sell desktop apps. You know? Sure,
but even on OS X and Windows, there are tons of people selling good software.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that market's difficult.
Most of the software isn't open source, obviously.
Yeah, and I think they don't allow GPL in many cases.
Yeah, that's in the App Store on the phone, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Because on OS X you don't need the App Store.
OS X, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You can just download it on the site and so on.
I don't know how. I think it would be really tough. There are some companies like Omni. They have things like Omni Planner, and I think Adobe maybe makes money on selling software on the desktop. But aside from those large companies, I don't know a lot of companies that sell is successful there. I wish I could help them, but I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what to say.
Yeah, sadly,
yeah. Exactly. I mean, if the idea is good enough, of course, you can go to a backer and somebody might back you. Angel investors might back you.
Sure, yeah, but they wouldn't let you.
Money.
Yeah, they wouldn't let you to open source the code and then so on. So, so he does. He makes his money. That's not a.
Does he? Oh, good.
Not really an issue, but he doesn't want. He would like.
Oh, he doesn't want people stealing his. Yeah.
So
well,
if he open source it, how could he open source it? I was thinking about like just parts of it, like open source libraries which you have written or something. Because he has written like a web framework in PHP which he uses for all his customers and so on. This could be a way to give back to the open source community.
Absolutely, and in fact, I think he might find that users might use it and report bugs.
Exactly,
and that might be incredibly
even fix
valuable.
bugs and so on.
Yeah, that would definitely be the approach to go. I think that could be really effective. And if somebody were to take it and rebrand it, well, who cares? I mean, they're still using his software. That's more users. Is he monetizing that web framework? No, he's probably monetizing something else.
Exactly. He uses this web framework to write software for his customers.
Exactly. So yeah, that's a very smart way to do that. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, great.
Cool. Thank you very much, Richard. This was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Good luck in the US.
Thanks very much. And good luck with your podcast. I look forward to listening to it.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.